our work in the larger context of everything that's happening in the city and the budget, I think maybe we should spend a little time starting to think about, after we have that information based on what we heard yesterday, what is, sort of our plan for the next few days to come to some decision-making process of what it is we want to recommend. I mean, my initial thought is sort of like, after we take in that information, unless there's any other specific information we need from the Human Resources Department or from the Office of Law, it's really then sort of to go off and think about it a little bit, and then as the members of the committee, we can organize. I guess that's sort of a question, right? Do we have to do it in a public setting like this to discuss, or is that sort of only in sort of a public setting to take input and deal with the members of the city?
Unless it falls under one of the exemptions to the Open Meetings Act, you would have to have a public meeting, and you would have to put out an agenda. And even if it doesn't fall, or even if it does fall under one of the exemptions, you still have to go into open session and then close the meeting.
So after we get to a place where we're not taking any input from anyone in the city, it's just sort of a deliberating session, how would you recommend we structure that?
Well, I think it's ultimately up to you whether you want it to be open or closed. I don't know what the previous deliberations, if they were open or closed. I would lean more towards having it be open, unless there's a overwhelming desire to have it closed. I don't, off the top of my head, and I'd have to double check to make sure I have all the exemptions right. I would have to make sure that one would apply. So I can look into that right now. But yeah, I mean, it really is ultimately up to you guys, but I think probably being open is the better route to go.
And in the past, Faye, I mean, Mike, like you've just been sort of in whatever room you were normally in, right, talking. So this is sort of the online of that, right?
We went off, I think Allison's office in the law department is like a conference room or somebody's former office back then. But when we discussed money and our opinions, that was closed. We had one open requirement. We had to give 30-day notice so that the public could come, and we sat in the actual chamber and allowed, but it's a different arena, and we've gotten our public comments, but that deliberation amongst each other, bouncing things off, that was a closed session for the last 2 times I recall. But things change, and I'll defer to what Carrie says, but
well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm so sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm not comfortable bouncing amounts and things people said off, and if we could do it by Zoom and it not be recorded, I'd feel more comfortable, because we're just bouncing off. And then to be held accountable for a thought I had and then I changed my mind, that's a little getting too closely scrutinized in my 10-cent opinion, but I'll defer what the group recommends.
Yeah.
I'll just email you guys.
I think I'm with Faye. I would appreciate the room to ask questions and explore and define ideas. And if I have to do that in a public recorded way, then I will be more hesitant to voice my unformed ideas.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I think right, like what I would envision, right, is that we can sort of have that conversation, and then as we come together with what recommendations we'll be making, in writing. I mean, if there's utility in coming back and having that discussion on the record, on video, and even with some thoughts of why we're recommending what we're recommending. But I understand the sensitivity to how to do that, so you actually get a real dialogue. So
how you feeling, Joe, about it?
Well, I think a lot of what we're doing right now is research, and we're sort of fumbling around trying to figure out what we know and what we don't know. And I don't know that should all be out in the public, but I'm I agree with what Faye and Allison, and I agree with what you're saying, so.
So Carrie, can you check and see if we can do that? From what I
I was
understand,
looking at it. I was looking at it while you guys were speaking, and I think it probably would fall under the personnel exemption because it does say employee or official. So I wanted to double check that and make sure, because it's been a minute since I've looked at Open Meetings Act requirements, so I didn't want to speak out of turn. But like I said before, it's absolutely up to you guys and your discretion. And if you want to have a closed meeting, you certainly, there is a category that this would fall under.
well, thank you for looking that up so quickly, Carrie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to follow that thread. So after we're done today and we feel like we have, as Joe said, all of the research in, and we don't have any other questions for the HR department or the Office of Law, then I'll be in touch with each of you about setting up that next conversation. How about?
Yeah, in terms of logistics, and I'm sure Alderman Pfeiffer, you're probably well aware of closed sessions and how they work and stuff like that. It would have to be an open meeting. You would then close it. So I would be there to make sure that you guys are staying within the confines of that closed meeting, not that there's really a risk of it ever kind of going outside of that scope in this situation. And Trisha, as the liaison, could be there as well. And
Yeah.
I think in previous closed sessions, and Hillary could probably speak to this better than I could for boards and commissions. And now that we've gone virtual, they're still recorded, but obviously they're not published on
YouTube.
the YouTube channel.
Correct. Yeah,
But then you would have
sorry.
to go back up. No, I'm sorry. You'd have to go back up into open session afterwards and sort of give a summary. And
Yep.
there's also a form that needs to be filled out. So I can work on getting that form filled out and get it to, I think it probably would be you, Alderman Pfeiffer, to have to sign off on.
Sure. Okay. Good. No, that's really helpful. So it'll be sort of after we get hopefully everything, the input today, then we'll work on scheduling that when it makes sense. So,
Yeah. And as Carrie said before, the agenda would reflect that you're meeting,
Yeah.
and that there will be a point at which you're going to officially close the meeting.
Sounds perfect.
Since we're trying to land with that, I'm just not available tomorrow evening, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I am available. I already have two pre-scheduled. One I'm doing a presentation and one is another meeting. So anytime on Friday, anytime Saturday and Sunday. So I just wanted to put that out there while we have idle time. So if you could accommodate that, I'd appreciate it. If not tomorrow, if it has to be tomorrow, it would have to be on a way early end of the day at maybe like 9 o'clock, 9:30. So I don't know with everybody else's commitment, but it's pretty tight for me tomorrow. Sorry.
No,
But I'm of the essence, the quickest we can, that would be great, but
exactly.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could look at what is like sort of Friday during the day look like for people.
I can't do Friday
Oh,
during the day. I could do tomorrow morning. I could do Friday after 4. I can do Saturday after 12,
Okay.
12:30. And then I'm free after that.
Friday and Saturday for me would be the exact same that you just said, Allison.
Okay.
I could do anytime after 4 on Friday and anytime after 12:30. The bank's open on Saturday, so I could do anytime after that as well.
Okay.
So thank you.
But I could do Thursday morning at 9.
At 9,
Yeah, I could,
I could do Thursday morning at 9.
if that's helpful.
Yeah, I could.
I would not be able to join you
Okay.
tomorrow morning. Just to,
Maybe Saturday afternoon.
Friday in the afternoon, I can definitely help you.
Okay.
Anytime afternoon forward.
I'm also
then,
good for Friday afternoon. Saturday, I probably am not going to be good, depending on, I don't know how long the deliberations would take, but kind of at 4 o'clock, I have to celebrate my mom's birthday.
Oh,
As you
That is-
should.
far more crucial.
Did we lose Joe again?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm booked on Friday till 5, but I could do it at 5.
Okay.
But if we want to try and see if we can get into it then, and I mean, or tomorrow morning, if that, it sounds like that doesn't.
Right.
But Tricia's not available tomorrow morning, so-
Right.
Okay.
and she's crucial.
I
Hillary is
prefer Friday
Friday.
at 5.
I prefer that as well.
Yeah,
Oh, great. Okay.
okay.
So we'll just
I will
check.
check with you. Mhm.
Is available.
Good. Thank you.
What did Hillary say? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Friday at 5 is available.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I'll put an agenda together for you that includes an opportunity to close the session. And I'll let Carrie review it before I give it to Hillary to publish. How's that?
Sounds great.
For me,
So let's say we land with everything Friday. So then we present it to Allison had offered to write it for us. How much time does she need to write it? Because the 8th is right there. Or Carrie, you're writing it in her place. That's right,
I
correct?
am.
I don't know. Allison wrote ours in prior, but she had mentioned in one of the YouTubes that I saw, I was not at the meeting, that she would put it together for us. So maybe, I didn't know if you were taking Allison's place, correct? You're in the law department as well, right?
Me or Allison?
Oh, I'm so
Carrie.
sorry, Carrie.
Carrie.
No, what is the attorney that was on before?
Ashley.
Ashley, I do apologize.
So yeah,
Allison,
Ashley,
Allison, I gave you a homework assignment.
I know, I was like, oh,
I'm so sorry. In fact, that's where we met next to Ashley's office. She was new back then, but she had, how much time will you think she'll need to get to prepare whatever we land with?
she's probably not planning because she's not handling the commission this time around. She handled the first meeting because I had surgery last week, so she filled
Gotcha.
in for me. I usually, and Trisha and I can work it out because usually the liaisons are the ones that draft that. So between Trisha and I, we can figure it out or do something.
Okay.
I was not planning on writing it. So
Well, I'm just saying,
figure it
every
out.
commission I've ever been on, it was written by the law department. We didn't write it.
Oh.
We never wrote it.
I was unaware of that.
No, if you could probably look at the language, you can try to see on the last one, it was not prepared by us. And I'm 100% sure Ashley did it the last time
Okay.
because she was our liaison. But if you want to get guidance from her, I just didn't want to have, we don't even have enough time once we deliberate real quickly. And then she needs like 3-4 days. And then, because like I said, the 8th is here.
So she provided the last report in a Word document version, which you can then use as like your template.
Okay,
And so that will help tremendously if that's what you want to adopt and you want to use as your template, to just make the changes that are the results of your deliberation. And as long as that's clear and understood, I would imagine it wouldn't be as cumbersome to then put your recommendations in that format.
oh, cool, thank
As long
you.
as it's clear what they are, and nothing to go
Ian?
back and forth over.
Ian, I've got to tell you, I'm getting kicked off of my Wi-Fi periodically, so that's why I'm disappearing. I've got it on the phone right now, so you might see the phone icon. Just want to let you
Yeah.
know that's for me, so.
Great. Yeah, so Joe, we were just talking a little bit about sort of scheduling a session where we could basically just deliberate amongst ourselves, and we're looking at 5 o'clock on Friday. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's sort of taking the template, right? Like, obviously, this is a different process than maybe previous iterations. So, from my perspective, if we can come to some agreement on what we think on Friday, we'll be able to put it. And I'm happy to sort of take the lead on that and sort of putting it in that template that Ashley shared. And then, from my perspective, is we meet our deadline when we get that to you. So we're that's sort of how on
Just so you know, I've been tasked with providing the staff summary, staff report for the resolution or for,
Okay.
you know, for your action. So that might be a little bit late too.
Tricia, what is the staff report?
It basically, I mean, the intent is to give a summary of what is going to come before the body, before the council.
Okay.
And sometimes it includes a financial summary.
Mhm.
So you can see the fiscal impact of
Okay.
recommendations.
Okay.
In
Thanks.
the past, the commission had to present it as well at a council meeting. When would that be?
Monday, the 8th.
On that's why it's the drop dead day.
Yeah, that's your reporting date. That's when your homework is due.
Is there a time on that Monday when we have to appear, or does the paper appear on our behalf?
I do not know if,
Might be a law
Ch-
question as to, do they want to hear from you when you turn it in, or once the legislation, the accompanying legislation is introduced?
Faye, I believe the last time that the chair made the presentation to the commission.
And we owe you big.
But
Like,
if it's going to go on first reader on Monday. Is that the idea?
pulling up the
Or is it just going to be?
draft agenda just to make it one on it. Let's see if they have it, because there's been a change to how city council meetings are now conducted. And I don't know if they have it grouped together. Let's see. Okay, so it's just listed as a placeholder right now for the resolution findings of the Council Compensation Commission.
So I mean, it would make sense to me that like whenever it gets introduced and then it goes to public hearing would be the time where we would present, probably, right? Like before
Well,
the
it's not
public.
going to go to a public hearing unless the council members specifically ask for it, since it's a resolution.
Exactly. Yeah. So. But
So they may not ask this council, anything could happen. They may not ask for it to go to a public hearing. Generally, they don't, but since they very well may because of the topic. Sometimes they may try to suspend the rules and have it passed on Monday night and get it through on second reader then. So it's kind of a
Really?
toss up. I can sort of put feelers out tomorrow when I'm in the office to see if anyone on the legislative side has sort of a feel for what is going to be expected at the council meeting, and if a presentation's expected, if it's just sufficient to submit the report, if things of that nature, and I'll get back
Sure.
to you guys.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and it might be worthwhile reaching out to Ashley as well to see what knowledge she has of how it proceeded.
Last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask her.
Thank you.
Tricia, may I ask you a quick question? I love the spreadsheet you prepared for us. Does it have the city population size information?
That's on your MML document that was
Okay,
previously given.
all
So
right, I'll look back through that. Thank
if you
you.
want me to stick it on there, I can do that. I can put it on there for quick reference if you like.
I know I can refer back. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I don't want you to have to be redundant, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for holes to be filled in on the city manager's pay for City of Bowie and City of Rockville. You know that their compensation is pretty substantial in both of those jurisdictions. I have previous city managers' pay, but I don't have the current one. And I did find out today that the city manager's pay for the city of College Park, it's a vacancy right now. And so that position was 193,000 and change at the time that individual left. So they provide for opportunity to get cost of livings and performance increases at the city of College Park.
Great. Thank you. And I see David Jarrell has joined us, Mr. City Manager. Thank you for
Good evening.
taking.
Good to see everybody.
Absolutely. So I'm not sure if you know everybody, but the members of the commission are Faye Curry, I know who's been in this role in the past, and Allison Webster Giddings and Joe Connors. So
Hi, David. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, nice to meet you all.
great, David. So I think we spent a little time with almost everybody on the council yesterday to get their input on sort of how they see this, and I think we at the end of that we were all sort of struck with the real question of like how should we be thinking about any changes we would want to make in the context of what will be happening within the rest of this year, where this will land in the midst of a budget dynamic, in the midst of a pandemic and an economic like catastrophe, and we're just sort of really curious how you're thinking about that and how you would look at all these sort of pieces.
Sure, thank you. So we're facing a very difficult FY22 budget. Right now, we're projecting that expenses are going to exceed revenues by about 7.4 million. So we're facing a deficit. And of course, we have to submit a balanced budget to the council, as Ian knows very well. So we've actually opened bargaining with the unions to start talking about some personnel action. About 80% of our budget is personnel costs. So you can go a certain way with non-personnel savings. Most of that we took advantage of last year for the current budget, for the FY21 budget. So there's not a lot of extra funding available on the non-personnel side. So as I said, we're going to visit the issues of we have a 3% COLA that's been agreed to and is in the labor agreements for all employees July 1st. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at furloughs, and as a last resort, if there's not opportunity for other savings, then we'll have to look at layoffs. So it's a pretty dire year for the city next year that we're facing from a budget perspective.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think one of the questions we have is how should we think about sort of any changes that obviously would have a budget impact, right? We would we should basically wrestle with that at the outset here. So I mean, obviously it's small in the scheme of things, but I mean, I have to imagine people are going to be very uncomfortable talking about any increases while they're making all these tough choices for the workforce as a whole.
Yeah, Ian, I guess that's sort of my perspective, is that I think you guys take a look at it and do benchmarks and see where the council is compared to other councils and make your recommendation irrespective of the budget. And then I think it's up to the council at that point to determine if the city can afford whatever those recommendations are. But I don't think that you guys necessarily should take that into account. I think you just say, what's the prevailing going rate for the council members, and what's fair and reasonable for them to get for all the time they spend for the city. That's my perspective. I think it's really the council's decision on how much they approve and how they budget or balance the budget based on whatever they agree to pay for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Anyone other questions for David?
Yeah, David, this is Joe Connors. Have you done any projections for the future years going forward? Because we're doing projections for compensation for the next term, not just this next year. So
yeah, so most of the deficit that we're projecting is COVID related. COVID is, as with every city and county across, well, I guess California doesn't have this situation, but most of us are suffering from this of lost revenue because of COVID. So we think that, perhaps mid-year next year, so the end of this calendar year, things will start getting better. Hopefully it'll be better before that, but that's what we're projecting as things start returning to normal with the vaccines and all the other things that are going on with COVID about mid-year in the fiscal year into the calendar year for 2021. And then, so the FY23 budget should be better. We have some structural issues that we need to deal with, and we're hopeful that we can deal with those as part of this whole closing the deficit for FY22. And if that's the case, then we should be in much better shape in FY23.
Thank you.
So again, I think that's really, again, part of that whole rationale for just recommending what you think is an appropriate salary, and let, maybe the council say, well, this year is not a good year to give ourselves a raise, but maybe we can look at FY23 to do that when the budget is better than it is going to be for 22.
Hi, David. This is Allison Webster Giddings. The council has been pretty clear that the depth of their duties has increased, and perhaps also some of the scope, and that's increased certainly due to constituent expectations, and also in part due to, I would say, maybe a mayoral philosophy, given that we have a different mayor and the desire to have them a little more involved. Are there things that are happening within the city that could offset some of that? Is this a structural thing that is growing, that the city has the capability or is looking at making adjustments to, or not?
Wow, that's a really tricky question.
Sorry.
And I'm sure that Ian knows that's so I think there's a lot of legislation that is taken up in the city. I think it's kind of a constant tweaking of the city code, and I think that creates a lot of work for the council. I think the council takes on a lot of work themselves for constituent services that perhaps could be handled by the city staff, but they choose to do that, and that's probably a good thing, something that they should do. But the amount of that and the amount of sort of walking things all the way through to completion, instead of saying I'll take the call, I'll pass it off to somebody like Hillary to follow up with city staff, and then we'll get back to you. I think that's sort of a choice that they make, and a lot of them do make that choice to stay with some of these issues and work them all the way through. So that's more of a philosophy type of thing. It's always a difficult thing to define what the lanes are for the various parts of government, and maybe Ian. I always keep looking at Ian because he knows this as well as I do, but the council has certain lanes, the city attorney has certain lanes, city staff has certain lanes, and it works best if we all stay in our lane and follow our responsibilities, but that doesn't always happen. So some of the additional work is just by various entities veering out of their lanes and trying to do things that they wouldn't have to. So that's the tricky part, right? Is trying to keep people in their lanes. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And see if Ian wants to add anything to that comment.
It's a valid, right? Like, I mean, there's in all different, with all different mayors and all different combinations of people on the council, there's always a lot of tension of, this is something the council should be in charge of and the mayor shouldn't, or the city manager shouldn't. And so I think that does create a certain amount of the sort of workload that, sort of how things bubble up. But it's it's a constant point of tension. I'm not sure it speaks to why a number of them said, who'd been there for a number of terms, that it seems like it's a lot more work now than it used to be. And whether that's sort of, social media and the ease of their constituents to get in front of them, right?
Yeah.
that they want to be responsive to, that wasn't maybe as true 10 years ago. So I mean, I think there's probably a number of reasons that can get you to that sense they all seem to have. But
Mhm. Mhm.
They do work a lot of hours. I've got to say that, they make a little bit of money and they work a lot of hours and are available for, when we call on them for whatever the issue might be, they're very available. And that's been my experience for 10 years. So it's not necessarily the current council, but they're very responsive and very dedicated to their duties for just a little bit of money.
any other questions for David while we have him?
Yeah, I don't know if it's within our scope, but certainly we've heard that there's minimal support to them. And so I don't know that we can recommend additional support or if that's possible, but I'll just sort of toss that out there, David, if you wanted to comment on that, is that perhaps some of this workload that they have is there because they don't have enough people within the city who can cross those lanes that you were talking about. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably accurate. Just based on looking around the area and my experience, I came from San Diego, which is a much bigger city, but they have council staffs there. They have, about a dozen people on each council staff. But again, that's a city of 1.3 million people.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in Orono County, the council members there have at least one staff person to support. And we have one person, period, that sort of supports the whole council. And so there's not a lot of support, and there's probably not a lot of, unless we specifically work it out, a lot of definition on how they just get normal supplies and materials that they need and make use of copy machines. And, they have an office that they all share with cubicles. So again, probably not the best setup for the council members. So I guess I would agree that they probably do get just the bare bones support from the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Those are all my questions.
Great. Faye, anything you want to dig into?
No, thank you very much for that financial update. Being on a Finance Advisory Commission, I anticipated that response. So that might be something that if we do make a recommendation, it would have to be phased in, but we may or may not. So thank you, David, very, very much. Appreciate that candor. I appreciate that a lot. So it gives us a lot to think about.
Yeah, thank you for taking a couple minutes to jump on with us, David. This was very helpful.
You're very welcome. Anything else before I sign off?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks
for your time, David.
Yeah,
thank you all for taking the time to do this. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Can I jump in real quick and amend an earlier statement I made? I'm 0 for 2 tonight, so sorry about that. But I completely had forgotten that there is a required public hearing on the resolution. And Hillary, thank you, Hillary, sent me the previous ordinance from last time and the resolution. And when I read that, I realized, oh yeah, there is that part of the code that requires a public hearing on your guys' recommendation. So I would assume that at that time, that's when any presentation would be made, not at the meeting on the 8th. So I apologize for any confusion that I may have caused.
That's good news. That's what, one less thing we have to do this week, right? So it's thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. And Tricia shared the only public comment that we have seen so far, but I assume, you know, we may have others trickle in and we can be made available, you know, aware of those as you see them from that web portal.
Yeah, I assume either from me or from Hillary that they'll come in. That one was addressed to me, and I just forwarded on. If I get any others, I'll just, when I receive them, I'll just forward them on since we're at this stage.
Great. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts for our friends here on the staff in advance of sort of getting into that on Friday afternoon?
I've just been thinking about some of the conversations we had last night. One thing that struck me was, you know, the $1,500 for the allowances, that would be the education as well as all the expenses. Does seem pretty small compared to what you would expect them to be doing throughout the year. Sheila Finlayson, she mentioned breaking it down between education and other expenses, I believe. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. You know, to me, the expenses should be paid regardless of, you know, what they are, because some things come up and we shouldn't expect them to be paying for that, you know, if it exceeds their $1,500. I think it should be a little bit more, especially considering their phone expenses. And I was a little alarmed when Ellie Tierney mentioned that she's getting, she didn't say getting harassed, but that's the way I interpreted it. And to have somebody doing official business and being harassed on her personal phone because of that seems to me to be a problem. I don't know how to deal with that, but you know, I want to throw that out as well. I think that something should be done about that. I don't know what the proper amount to figure for education is, but you know, 500 or 1,000. I don't know what the education is involved with these sort of things, if they're online or if they have to go someplace and register. But if it's one time a year or 2 times a year, but you know, it seems to me that we ought to allocate $500 or $750 or $1,000 for education alone, and then a certain amount for other expenses. And I'm not sure that we should, you know, set an amount. Maybe we should, you know, have them go back to the old system and put in for reimbursements. I don't know if it works the way they have it right now. So I just want to throw that out. I just don't like the way that it's being done.
I was thinking much the same stuff, but I was going to ask Carrie. I know, like, even since the beginning of this term, hasn't the council taken some action to change the pieces of that around? Like my recollection was that it used to be more segmented into 2 pieces. Took that division away. Is that what has happened?
So the code, the $1,500 allowance is, I guess previously, so when you were the city councilman on the city council, it was exclusively for education and training. There is a separate section of the code that says that the city council is entitled to access to supplies. So those are maintained separately and differently. There isn't sort of an allowance towards supplies because the supplies should be made available to the city council. But the $1,500 was solely for education and training, and they recently amended the language of the code to also encompass sort of constituent services to include things like town halls. So any costs associated with putting on a town hall, whether it's, I guess, providing beverages and things like that, that is now also encompassed in the allowance for education and training. But supplies and things of that nature, the telephone, access to a telephone, and that is separate from the allowance. There is no monetary amount that's set on supplies.
Has there been any talk? I'm sorry. Has there been any talk about providing phones for them for just their work?
So I don't want to. I don't have personal knowledge. I know that there had been discussions about a year or two ago. There was a city council member that had requested and I believe received a city issued cell phone. I don't know for sure if the remaining council members were offered or asked. My understanding is that some were asked if they wanted to have a separate or a second cell phone and had declined that offer, or that had indicated, everyone already has my personal cell phone number. So there's really no point in having a city issued cell phone at this point because people are still going to contact my personal number. But I was not involved in those actual conversations. So I was hearing it secondhand. I can't, guarantee that that's actually what took place. But that's my understanding, is that it had come up within about a year and a half ago. And one council member did receive a city issued cell phone.
Now, something we could do for the purposes of what you're evaluating is I could find out what a city issued cell phone cost is. So when they're issued, what kind of cost the city does incur if that is
Well,
provided.
that would be good to at least know. I mean,
Mhm.
And sort of to piggyback off that, I know sort of in the world I work in professionally, right? Like it's more common, and I wonder if it is in sort of the city thing, to basically say, instead of here's a city issued cell phone, here's a stipend basically to pay for your own phone bill, because we're going to be asking you to use it for business purposes. But to the point that Carrie just raised, everyone wants to hold on to their same number because their personal and their business life is all merged together on one device, right? So like it's often done as, here's $50 a month, you're paying for your bill already, but we're easing that because we're asking you to use it in this context.
Right.
I'm not sure I've seen that in sort of a business setting. I'm not sure I've seen that in a city setting, but like it's maybe a different framework to get at the same idea, which is you probably already got a cell phone, but we're asking you to use it. Let's ease the cost of that for you, that we could think about.
And that just may be different for an incoming newly elected alder person that, not having their phone number officially out there. That may be a choice that would be made by somebody that isn't already established in circulating a number.
Well, it's just a thought that I had. It might be something that they might not be interested in either.
But I mean, as I heard Carrie explain that, right? Like, so with the current change, just allows them to then use those resources in addition to going to MML, for example, right? Or like, but to be able to use them to do events with their constituents and pick up those costs, but it doesn't allow them to basically pay their cell phone bill, right? Like it does, or it doesn't have that much the flexibility, the 1,500.
So the 1,500, I don't think a payment of a cell phone bill would be encompassed in that. I think that would sort of fall under the other city code provision that says that they shall have access to certain information technology such as telephones. So I think that's outside of that $1,500 realm, because that is solely related to education, training, and then constituent. I can pull up the language. I don't want to say it's constituent services, but I think it sort of functions with constituents like town halls and things of that nature, not necessarily responding to phone calls.
If you could send us the language, I think that'd be helpful to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as you recall from reading the prior report, that separate stipend of $1,500 was actually blended into the rate. So you didn't have to go through the detail on getting reimbursement for meals or other kinds of costs they incurred in the course. So they went from $13,500 to $15,000 by blending that in.
Right, and that 1,500 does not exist now. That's right. Is that correct? Or are they getting
It was a separate amount. They had separate amounts, as I recall.
So I'll send the ordinance. It just was passed on the 11th, so it hasn't been uploaded to the online version of the city code. But the annual allowance of $1,500 is used exclusively. It says expenses related to the performance of usual and customary constituent services. Such expenses may include supplies for town halls and constituent outreach, education, and training. I'll send that to you guys right now.
Okay,
That is but that is, you know, you get a receipt and you submit that for that 1,500, which is different than how we went from 13,500 to 15,000 in the base salary.
I believe so.
I
I
don't-
believe so.
It'd be helpful to see. Yeah, I need to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
Wait, one of the other things that Alderwoman Finlayson said was that, I think she said that nearly all of that 1,500 was covered the cost of the MML conference. And is that conference something that we expect our council members to go to?
I believe it's purely optional.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And-
there is usually traditionally a good chunk of the council who does go, but it's
Right.
Uh-huh.
It's very beneficial, especially for someone that's new in the role, from what I've heard and
yeah,
past conversations. Correct, Ian? Yeah.
yeah.
So it's
No,
kind of,
it's
it's the
definitely
only
worthwhile.
school to learn how to really be an older person if it's some type of formal training. And I don't know what that cost is associated. As you said, Allison, I think she said that it ate up a lot of the 1,500. I don't
Right.
know what the expense is.
Yeah, I mean it's registration and travel and hotel and all that sort of stuff, and it's sort of how
Yeah.
it gets. A number
So
of
I
things.
wonder if that's something that we ought to also consider, that if at a minimum that a newly elected alderperson we should cover the cost for that in addition to their $1,500. Because as we say, that's very important. I don't know if we can call that out, but we might want to think about that.
I think it was virtual this past year.
Yeah, probably.
Considerably
Yeah.
less expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah, but hopefully not in 2 years.
Right.
Right,
exactly.
right.
Yeah, no, that's so. Yeah, we should definitely. I think we're all on the same sort of thought, in that there's something in that, whether it's not necessarily the salary line for the alderman, but it's really in that in the benefits piece about how to be smarter about that, so we actually they get some more support to do the
Yeah.
things they do.
Excellent. Excellent.
So,
So-
so please.
So I'm sorry to go back on this, but the 1,350 to, or 13,500 to 15,000 jump, was that 1,500 then an increase in the salary, or was that moving costs or benefits around?
I feel it was the latter.
Yeah.
Based on their conversation last time, and like Ian, I have to really go back and look at that report just to feel I'm really repeating this
I'm
correctly.
confused. I'm confused too. I thought it was, they were separate, but maybe I read it wrong too, so.
If I recall, the commission before, not the last one, but the one before that, a lot of the older persons weren't using that 1,500 because it was cumbersome to submit
Yeah.
receipts and get reimbursed. So to ease that, they put the 1,500 in with their base pay to allocate as they deem, because it was an expense to become an alderman, if I recall correctly, but that was trying to absorb that issue from the prior commission to the last commission to this commission. So, but that's where that amount came in. And that's why there was a minority and a majority, because there was a dissension about that. So, and I think at one commission, it was recommended it go up to $18,000 for all the persons, but I think the council put it back down to 15. That may not be written in stone, but I do recall that conversation.
Okay,
So I don't know what happened once it went before the body, and that's probably why I got back to 15. I don't know.
okay.
But like I said, please, just like Carrie, say that perfect legal language. Don't quote me, but I think that's how I recall. This is what occurred. Thank
Well, and
you.
as you'll see in the email I just sent you guys, I am now 0 for 3 tonight because
Nuh-uh.
the language, yep, I'm having it's been a long day, let me tell you.
I know, and we appreciate you participating.
But I think based on the new legislation, which kind of begs the question why it was passed in the first place, but based on the new legislation, I think probably the issuance of cell phones would likely fall under that 1,500 allowance, because it does say supplies for constituent outreach, and I think you could argue that the cell phone is certainly used for that. I thought it was limited to sort of putting on events. I didn't think it was supplies associated with that. So at least I'm clarifying when I'm wrong, so that I'm not leading you guys to astray. It's just,
Right.
every time I say something, maybe take it with a grain of salt, wait for me to confirm it, especially tonight, because I apologize. I'm all over the place.
That's
No, we
great. Thank you.
understand. Thank you.
But
You're
that
welcome.
doesn't mean that that amount of money, if the city issued a cell phone, couldn't then therefore be deducted in value from that amount of money, whether you chose to use your personal cell phone or you asked for the city to provide you with one. We, at our department level, we have this all the time. If you have certain number of staff that have cell phones, then that's part of your operating budget. So that's something that I don't think is going to preclude its inclusion or option. But I can still find out what that costs right now. What a city issued cell phone is in value.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to see it. And before Friday, I definitely want to go back and look at. I know Ashley sent us the from the finance department the actual spend of those accounts, right? Like, so there was always an issue that I mean, people didn't use all of the money that was available to them, which is a question in this too, right? Like if the thought is they're under resourced, we want to give them more money, like how do you square that argument? But we can dig into that on Friday.
Yes.
Sit down, buddy.
Okay,
Is there any more sort of
Nope.
question for the staff to have? But so great if you could send us carried that language of the most recent change.
I sent you the ordinance just now.
Great.
thank you.
That
Thank you.
has a language in there. And then
Excellent.
I'll get the closed session statement together and make sure and run it by Tricia, make sure she's good with it too, and send it to you on my paper, so that I think you have to sign it. And then it
Okay.
goes with all the other stuff that goes in the record.
Thanks,
Sounds great.
Carrie.
Well,
Thanks, Tricia.
yeah, exactly.
You're
Thank you all so much for being so flexible and doing this.
Well, it's just the same amount of time. It's just all in 1 week, right?
Exactly. Look, the good news is you have Thursday night off, so
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Thank you for accommodating that.
Woo-hoo.
All right.
All right, thanks.
We'll talk
Good
to
night,
you.
everyone.